All right, our meeting is being recorded. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Vicki Gill, and I am the program volunteer for the Instructional Design and Learning SIG, a special interest group for the Society for Technical Communication. And this afternoon, we have a great program, and it may be morning where you are, or if you're listening to the recording, it could be in the middle of the night. But anyway, greetings. And we have a great program with a very well-known speaker, a very well-known trainer. We are lucky enough to have Mary Whalen on the webinar with us. Mary has, for over 40 years, Mary has been helping companies use training and documentation solutions to improve employee performance, increase customer satisfaction, and ensure regulatory compliance. So that's quite a wide range of skills and experience, and we're kind of excited about hearing from Mary this afternoon. So if everyone's completed the poll, we would like to encourage you to complete the poll so that we'll know. We want to collect a little data on who we have here today. And with that, I would like to have our speakers teach us. I'm looking forward to what she has to say. Mary?
Thanks so much, Vicki. I'm excited to get the chance to talk to you guys, and like I said, it looks like we have kind of a wide range of levels of experience coming in as technical writers and instructional designers, and also with e-learning. And so I'm looking forward to sharing my experience with you, but also getting some ideas from you guys on, for those of you who are more experienced, what has worked for you. So I will get started. All right. Just end these polls. And item. Okay.
Looks good.
Here we go. All right. So this presentation is getting started with video training. So today I'll start with a brief introduction and then share what I think are the most important lessons that I've learned about how to streamline your process for designing videos and developing content, tips for preparing to record, and then actually for recording videos, and then for the editing and production process for your videos. And there are so many things that I could talk to you about and share with you, but I'm going to focus on the things that I thought were most impactful for me in my process. So it sounds like the sound is pretty clean on here, but if you could just put yourself on mute now, and then throughout the presentation I'll be asking you to raise your hand to contribute, and you can see that there's up on the top menu bar that the last sort of icon up there is a drop-down where you can raise your hand. You can also pick other icons, and hopefully Vicki will help me make sure that I'm monitoring any questions you guys have that are related to me, and Vicki will keep you connected here. It will be a little bit tough for me, I know, to follow the chat while I'm speaking and then also having people contribute. So that'll be best if you can raise your hand if you have something to contribute to discussion. Okay, getting started. So my background is that I have a bachelor's degree in English, and part of my bachelor's degree, kind of unusual, I actually did a thesis in technical writing, and I spent my last semester in an internship at Baxter Healthcare as a documentation and training analyst, and continued in that job, but then went back to school and got my master's in teaching. So I had some experience as a classroom teacher, and I also kind of along the way over the years, I might have heard Vicki wrong saying 40 years, more like 20 years that I've been out in the field. I had a few years, though, as a stay-at-home mom, but most of my career has been as an instructional designer and some as a trainer, and then also as a technical writer. My main expertise is in software training materials and in developing classroom training materials. I also put online help in there and also some e-learning. So the case study that I'm going to talk about is my work with a company called Lynx Technology. And Lynx Technology provides software to utilities companies who need to report their, they call them transactions, the services that they sell to their customers. They need to report them to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It needs to be in a certain format, certain order, and so they provide software that it pretty much does this for their customers, although their customers, of course, need to enter the appropriate information in the right order in their software. So, the end product that they wanted was they wanted a user guide, an online user guide, and they also wanted training videos for their customers. And the reason that they decided to do training videos was mostly that they're a smaller company and the director of IT was providing most of the consulting with their companies who are, you know, larger companies and these huge contracts, but that his time, he was being stretched too much, so he wanted to provide videos in place of doing some of the training that he was doing with the customers. The development tool that I used was Camtasia Studio, and that was because the customer already had Camtasia Studio. So over the course of 2 years, I did over 70 demo-style training videos, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. It definitely was a learning curve for me, finding out what worked best, what process worked best, and how to streamline things. So, like I said, in this case, we decided on demo-style training videos. It wasn't really we, it was the client coming in. That was what the client wanted as a product from me, was those demo-style training videos. And part of it, again, was because they had the tool Camtasia Studio, and they'd done other videos, just, I think they called them webcasts, and they had some recorded webcasts that were kind of more casual. When have you found, or when would you recommend demo-style video training to your clients or to your company? And Preeti, I think your hand is not raised to contribute right now. Is it still raised from earlier? Okay. Any ideas about that? Okay. Well, it might be something you need to consider. It's not really the scope of this this presentation to talk about why, but more just about how. Okay, so designing and developing your content. So for me, I come from sort of a background that I have a writing process that I follow, and you know, depending on your process, you might have a linear process of development or have a sort of an iterative one, depending on what, you know, what methodologies you prefer. But in general, I think you have a planning phase, a creating phase, and a finalizing phase. So for me, when I'm developing a training guide or user guide or online help, I would start with probably a task analysis or an outline and have the client review to make sure that we're covering the appropriate performance objectives and that the sort of flow that we have makes sense. Then I would develop the content and validate it, and then again have the client sign off, and then finalize where putting on the finishing touches, refining maybe some visuals, adding to the visuals, and then again the client signs off. So when I started out on doing these videos, I tried to do some research online and tried to ask on some message boards, you know, what are your most helpful tips about going and recording videos? And the one that I heard most was to make sure that you have a script that is really solid, that you work on your script until you feel like it's finalized. So my approach was to do my writing process with a script. I'd start, again, with task analysis and outline, review with the client, add the content to the script, have the client review it, and then finalize, and the client signs off, and we say, okay, we're ready to record videos. But what I was finding then was that there also was a process with developing the videos where I would be recording a video, I would edit the video, the client would review it, finalize, client signs off. And this just didn't feel like it was very streamlined. So I tried to figure out, why was it taking us so long to do these videos? Part of the problem was that, even after all this careful planning, that my client would see the final videos and would still have feedback for me. What I felt like was too much feedback. It didn't feel like we'd made a plan and that we'd stuck to it. Now, I don't feel like my client was a difficult person. I felt like there was something going on. There was a reason that my client was sort of, you might say, changing his mind. So again, I felt like it was not a streamlined process and that it was not preventing last-minute changes, and I didn't feel like we were working efficiently. So something about the review process was not effective, and I felt like the problem was that there was a gap between the review experience and the end product. So what I decided to do was try to make the review process bring my client as close as possible to the experience that he would have when he actually watched the videos. I realized that reading a script was a much different sort of cognitive process for him than watching a video and hearing audio. So what I tried to do was make the first part of my process a little bit more casual, where I would make a general plan and review it with the client, and then develop the content of my script. But rather than having the client review the script, I would go into the office and do a walkthrough where I would project the screen in a conference room, and then I would talk through the script and go through the actions in the script. I felt like that gave the client a much closer picture to what the end product was, and it sounds like a pretty simple solution, but it really did make an impact on how long this development time was and how many last-minute changes we would make. So then, again, I would incorporate the client feedback. I wouldn't worry about finalizing the script. Instead, would record the video and then go to editing and finalizing. And then that seemed to work well. So what I decided to do was streamline things even more. And after I created the script, I would actually record a walkthrough. And that was good for me because the client could watch the walkthrough at his convenience. He wouldn't interrupt me during the walkthrough to discuss things. He would give a summary of his feedback at the end, and then I would re-record the video only if necessary. Sometimes the initial walkthrough would be good enough that it could be the final video. So then again, editing and finalizing, and this felt much more streamlined than the initial process. So do any of you have any input on similar experience that you've had with designing and developing videos as far as working with SMEs or scripting, about that process?
So Mary, this is Vicki.
Yeah.
Catherine has her hand raised. Let's see, how do we get audio from her? And Jamie is typing.
Okay.
Oh, Catherine says I can type. Do you want to, Mary, can you see the chat window right now?
Yes. So Catherine,
Okay.
you don't have, you're not able to get off of mute. And Jamie, can you get off of mute and give your input?
I think most of our participants are in listen-only mode right now. Only a
Okay.
few of us have the phone.
Oh, right. Okay. I see. Okay, then I guess we'll use chat then. Okay, so Jamie, you feel like a solid script is the key, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, because again, I felt like I was spending too much time on solidifying the script. Okay. And storyboard over script. Okay. So I don't know if everyone's looking at the chat input, that it sounds like more of you are for having a solid script than others. And Virginia brought in the idea that you might have talent recording. Now, in the case of my project, I was doing the recording, but if my client would have done the recording, then it would have been a different story as far as how much of scripting we would have to do, partly because he is the subject matter expert. For me, I was also learning the product at the same time. Okay. And storyboarding versus script. Okay. And actually, maybe the next section of this, the next piece of my presentation, I'm going to actually look at scripting, and we can maybe talk a little bit more then about what should go in there, because I do think you need to plan your sound effects, captions, and things like that, even if it's just in a general way. Like if it's, hey, every time there's a menu selection, it's going to be circled in red, or it's going to, have a highlight on that part of the screen. Okay, I'm just going to take one more look at the chat. Okay, good point. So there are different things that you have to consider as far as how detailed and how finalized you want your script to be. And it sounds like most of you have had situations where you do want the script to be very final. For me, it ended up being a helpful thing, partly because of the client that I was working with, and just partly because of also we had some things with the data that I just found that helpful. But at least you know to consider that if you're someone who's new and going to be starting out. Thank you so much for your input. Okay. So when you actually go to plan your content for each video, you need to decide how you're going to chunk together your content. How long are your videos going to be? How are you going to, how many tasks are you going to include in a video? For for us, we decided that each video that we had should cover one complete task or a group of related tasks. The audience that we had for these videos were users who would be sitting at they had a desk job, sitting at a desk most of the day, and that the type of, when they would do these submissions, they called them EQRs, electronic quarterly reports. They were done quarterly, and that you wouldn't be so much doing work in little pieces. You're doing your EQR pretty much at one time, maybe over the course of the week, but so they would want to have a little bit more complex training, not just little snippets. So we tried to aim for the length of 3 to 5 minutes for each video. Sometimes videos were longer depending on the content. And we found that, or we thought that this would be easier for our audience to find time to watch the videos maybe between tasks that they were doing. And also that they wouldn't feel as overwhelmed about getting into the content of the videos. I think that, you know, if you have something on your to-do list that is, I need to watch a 20-minute training video versus, okay, maybe I can knock one of these 3 to 5 minute videos off, you know, after my lunch, I'll just do one. So we thought it might be less intimidating, and also easier to keep the viewer's attention for a shorter length of time. We also hoped that it would simplify doing updates, that they were as short as they were, that the less content you have in the video, the easier it can be to make your updates and still not to have to shift too many things around. Okay, and then also when you're thinking about how you're dividing up your videos, if you have the option to have a navigation menu, that can have an impact on whether you want to have shorter or longer videos, because if your users are wanting to skip through because they do want to watch things, you know, they want to watch a shorter time, or they're looking for help on a specific task, that can impact on how long. Okay, and I did notice that Preeti added a comment. Breaking up e-learning modules into the 5-minute chunks. Great. Okay. All right, so I'm curious to hear about your approach. Preeti, you had said that the 5 minutes seemed to work for you. What helps you determine how you're going to divide up your video content? Divided by functions.
My screen says multiple attendees typing. This is great.
Right. Yeah, I'm not just pausing, just waiting. Okay. Great. And again, that's okay. So again, the table of contents, providing a navigation menu or table of contents can help if you want users to be able to skip around within a video. And Tony, that 3 to 5 minutes is a good range to keep them engaged. Good. I definitely think that there's, you know, also the type of content that you're working with, or how motivated users are to watch the content. You know, these quarterly reports, there's a deadline. It's, you know, a federal requirement. So there's that sort of accountability that is somewhat motivating for our users. And I'm waiting for Preeti. I'll take one last comment and then go on, and thank you everyone for your input. Okay. Some are required. Okay. Sorry, see what Lori has to say. And are you asking that to Preeti, Lori, about getting metrics? To Tony, okay. Okay. Well, thanks again. And just continuing. Okay, so what actually goes into your script? What sort of information do you include in there or into your storyboard? Well, when you're just simply writing a training manual or a user manual for users, then you're worried about what they need to be doing, and you can use screenshots and things like that. But when you transition to video from just written documentation, you need to be pointing out, well, what will be on the screen, what sort of actions are taken, what sort of sample data should be used, what sort of effects you want to be added. And I'm going to show you a sample video, and Vicki, help me out here if I'm not sharing right, but I'm going to show you one of the videos that I actually created and for my clients. And this is going to be a little low tech because I'm just going to hold my microphone to my speaker here so that you can hear. But I just want to give you a general idea of what one of these videos looked like so that you have a point of reference for what I'm talking about. Okay.
And we're going to cross our fingers and think really good thoughts for you while you're setting this up.
Okay, thank you.
Because I think you'll be the first one. I think you'll be the first one, at least in my experience, to do sort of a live video.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
All right, let's see how this goes. And this has no sound right now.
Well, you have to stop sharing the, hang on.
Okay. Oh,
yeah, let's share your desktop. We'll stop sharing the document,
okay,
and then choose the share my desktop.
Okay, so I'll say stop sharing now, and I will say share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And
I see you loading. I feel good about this.
Great. I need to share multiple things, and I'm going to go to here. Do you see something?
Yes, I see a video. I think you're good.
The access, log in and log out. Okay. Supposed to start at the beginning, and we'll see here. Okay, so you should see a disclaimer on the screen. My client wanted to have that.
Tariff chart, your solution for making first e-tariff filing easy. Access, login, and logout. In this video, I will show you how to get started in TariffShark by demonstrating how to access TariffShark, add, update, and delete server connections, log into TariffShark, change your password, and log out of TariffShark. To access TariffShark, you might have a desktop shortcut set up, or the application might be pinned to your taskbar. Otherwise, you could use your Start menu to start the application. If your program is not listed.
Okay, so that's enough just to give you a general idea, and then I'll show the end.
Now, there are different ways to exit TariffShark. Any unsaved changes are lost when you exit, so be sure to save your work. If you click the close icon or select File Exit, TariffShark closes and logs you out. But if you select Log Off, Tariff Shark logs you off. That gives you the login dialog so that you easily can log back in when you're ready. This includes the video access, login, and logout.
Okay. So did you hear okay?
Yeah, I am applauding wildly. It actually worked
Okay.
for us. We could actually see your video in real time. That was great. Thank you.
Well, good. I'm not expecting that you can do an EQR or anything, and that you learned anything from the video. But I just want to talk about some of the components. And I'm going to go back. I'll come back here. Sorry. Give me just a moment.
You want to go back to your slideshow?
Yes.
Yeah. You're on your way.
Here? No?
No, not there. It should be at the bottom of your screen, little Adobe Connect controls. They're small and they're minimized.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in your tray.
Here, I'm going to... Adobe Connect. Choose window to share. Okay. I think I'm going back here.
Stop sharing screen, I think, first.
Stop sharing? Okay.
There. And now we can get back to the document.
Am I back?
You are back.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So again, what is on the screen? What action is taken? What is the sample data? What effects will be added? All that needs to be captured. Sorry to back up. So some of the things that we included, like I said, was a disclaimer slide at the beginning, and then sort of a title slide for the entire series of videos, and sort of commercial sounding Tariff Shark, you know, your solution for electronic quarterly reporting. And we decided to include music. And then also in this video slide where I talked about what would be included, I also said if there was something similar that would not be included, then I added that in there. And then again, an end slide at the end. Okay, so we talked about storyboard and scripts, and maybe you would call this a storyboard, maybe you would call it a script, because the actual words that I would be saying are in this document. We call it a script, and this is a pretty common format that I've seen people use, and this is what we used. In the first column is the visual, what will you see on the screen, so I take a screenshot of the part of the application that we were in. And then in the second column, I would include what the narration would be, and then also any sample data. So in this example, I was on this security roles tab. If you want to update the basic details of a security role, select the role and click Update. So then I would select the licensing admin role. And then as notes, highlight the role and update before selecting. So when I go to edit the video afterwards where I'd be adding any sort of effects, I would be highlighting on screen the role that I'd be selecting and then the update button so that the user would be directed towards those. And so that would be to help me know whether I would have to be showing something on screen or whether the editing done afterward would be taking care of directing the user toward the right part of the application or the data they needed to enter. Now this is an abbreviated sort of 3-column script where you have a visual. Then in the second column, instead of saying exactly what the narrator is going to say or the audio that they're going to add, then just giving direction, explain how to update a security role. and use the sample data licensing admin. And then notes about, again, what would be shown on the screen. And this would be a good one to use if you're familiar with the subject matter, if you're familiar with the application and you just need a little guidance, or if you don't feel like you need to be as formal and polished in your delivery. For us, I needed to be very clear about the subject matter. I was not an expert in this software until, of course, the end of the project. But if my client would have wanted to record the videos and just have me edit them, then he could have just easily explained how to update a security role, knowing that like the back of his hand. Okay, and I'm going to look at comments because I see some had come through. Music in the background. So I said, like I said, I used Camtasia Studio, and we just pulled some music from their video library that comes with the software that you get access to. And 3-column is best of script and storyboard worlds. Okay. Well, thanks, Vicki. I guess it's not quite a script and not quite a storyboard, but for me, any way that works, I'm happy with. Okay. So what about you guys? What do you do differently in your scripts, or what else do you think needs to be considered, or details that you need to add, or maybe things that you left out? Any input on that? I see someone typing. And while they're typing, Vicki, I just want to make sure on time check that we do have about 50 minutes left.
Yes, we do, and you can reserve some of that for Q&A, although we've been doing a really good job of having Q&A as we go. Okay. So you have plenty of time.
Jamie, I totally agree. Catherine, can you explain what you mean, expected result? Jamie, you tend to be detailed. That's my nature. Saying that's my nature, I mean, it is, to me, a very, sort of personalized process. Know what your options are out there. Know what you should be, considering, and do what works for you. And then, Catherine, you said expected result. And then, Preeti, most of your experience has been with Captivate simulations. And you review, meaning your video with me, or you review your storyboard? I need a little clarification there. Oh, and Vicki, I'm glad you brought up captions, because whether you're even going to include audio is a question. I mean, you might be translating this video, or you might have users who are non-native English speakers, and that makes a difference. You might be able to generate your captions. If you do have audio, you might be able to generate them automatically, depending on what kind of software you use. Okay. Oh, the expected, okay. So you'd say, Catherine, you'd say to add the expected result, not just here's what you're going to do, but also that maybe the next window that will open, or tab, or that they'll get a dialogue. Okay. Okay. Pretty. Mm-hmm. Okay. And Pretty, you don't do audio. Okay, a couple more comments here. You know, Marianne, I'm not sure what alt text is. If anyone wants to chime in. Vicki, is that something you can chime in on?
Well, it's a 508 compliance. Usually when we talk about alt text, it's 508 compliance for screen readers.
Okay, but it's not formatted as a caption that just has specific requirements. It actually is generated as in a specific format?
Well, the screen reader, I don't really understand everything about screen readers, but they will read the hidden text and the hidden properties of your objects on the screen, and alt text is one of those that they can read.
Oh, okay, they're hidden. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Behind the scenes. Okay.
So, and when I was talking about captions, I wasn't necessarily talking about closed captions.
Right.
Because in a noisy environment, you can kind of hear, but if you have words on the screen, it helps the message to just be a little more clear. So.
Well, and I was just thinking you meant captions, so I'm glad you clarified that.
Right.
Okay. All right. All right. So, again, there's a difference between how you're going to say things in a video versus the way that you're going to have written instructions. So when you're writing a script, I mean, that was one thing that was a transition for me, just as if, you know, you're writing for a magazine article versus an instructional manual or versus a TV show, that your style is going to be different, the level of detail in your content is going to be different, your tone is probably going to be different. So some of the differences in written instructions and video, I'd say that a rule of thumb for me, if I'm providing, let's say, you know, I was working on the user guide for this software at the same time as these videos, and that you want to document things fully. You want users to be able to find an answer if they have a question, and you have maybe a visual as in a picture that you can look at to do some explanation, but you need to explain verbally some things to reference where on the screen users need to be doing things or the type of information they need to enter. So an example might be if you're explaining how to update user information. You might have a 3-step process where you're telling them which menu to go to, what the menu selection is, and then how to select a user, and then the information that you want to update, that you define each of those fields. And in a video, you might say don't be repetitive as the rule of thumb. So, for example, if earlier in a video, if I've already had a procedure for how to enter the information for a user, when I talk about updating the information for a user, I might be more brief and say, go to the user list. Remember that you select configure users rather than telling them that it's a menu and such. And probably on screen, I'm going to be circling these options, and they'll see me demonstrate. So I don't need to explain it verbally. Select the user, make your updates, and click OK. So I'm assuming that I've already explained how to enter the information for a user, and I've given any tips about the username, password, or the full name fields, that I don't need to repeat this information again in the video because it will sound repetitive. So another rule of thumb might be that, again, if you're documenting things fully, you're including those written cues. And in the video, use reminders. Like I said, remember that you select configure users. You incorporate shortcuts and alternative navigation. So if the first time, when I'm showing how to enter user information, if I say, if I tell them to go to the user list at the configure menu, that maybe there's a button or an icon that you can use that I would direct them to instead. So that way in the video they've learned 2 different ways to access a user list. Again, and also again that you'll be using visual cues, the movement of your mouse when you're actually doing actions, and then when you're editing and you're adding in those, a red circle or an arrow or a highlight on the screen. Okay. Was there anything that you found out when if you transitioned from doing more written documentation to doing, e-learning and other types of writing that would be delivered verbally? And this might be something that just, comes naturally, but I think, depending on how heavy your experience is at doing different types of materials, that it could be, that you need a little adjustment period. Okay, and audio is more conversational in style, yes. And how conversational you get is going to depend on how formal you want the videos to be. Second person is okay, where you're saying you do this and you do that. Great. Great. Okay, well, thank you. It's really nice to get your input on what your experience was like. It's a little different than going on discussion boards and hearing from people. Okay, so sorry, I'll back up here. So after you've developed your content, then you can prepare to record. And for me, my recording area had a big impact on the quality of the videos that I produce. Now, I work from home for the most part, and my recording area was in my home. My client also offered to set up a recording area at their office, but I was able to work more quickly from my home, although I did have some challenges with creating a space that was quiet. I didn't realize that my furnace and my dishwasher could interfere with how things sounded on video. We got a great microphone, a high enough quality microphone for our purposes that made the audio sound super clear, but also that you could hear things whirring in the background. So you need to be away from things that are picked up by your microphone. Oops, sorry. Keep thinking I'm within PowerPoint. Select the right kind of microphone. Now, we got a Blue Yeti microphone, and it was about $250. I know that there's the brand Shure that also has a comparable one, but really the quality was so much different. When you go on YouTube, sometimes you hear videos that were recorded on the microphone just from your PC, and that could be, that could be enough for you, depending on how formal and depending on, whether it's something that's important to you or that it bothers you if, it's sort of fuzzy, or if you want to present sort of a professional, sound. So if you do decide to get an external microphone, you probably want to get some accessories that are going to help. For me, a floor microphone stand made a huge, huge difference. I had, the Blue Yeti comes with a desk stand, and when I was recording, it picked up the sound from my computer. It picked up the fan from that, and it didn't sound like a tiny fan. It sounded like a loud fan. But just putting the microphone in the floor mic stand alleviated that problem. Also, when you're recording, it's easy to sort of make your P's pop, and you get that extra sort of breathiness in there. And I didn't get one, but you can purchase a pop filter, and I think it's only a few dollars, that can prevent that from happening. Now, if it does happen, you can get audio software or use audio software to edit afterwards and change things. Now, I didn't use any external software. I used the very basics in Camtasia Studio for editing the audio, you know, turning the volume up on some parts, turning the volume down on some parts. Especially if I did have those popping P's, it helped somewhat. But what I found was there was sort of a trade-off. If you used audio software to improve the sound afterwards, that things just generally got more muffled. Or if you used I'm not sure if it's called a pop filter once you recorded, but if you use that to try to fix the popping P's, it just sounded muffled to me. But it might be something you want to investigate. I know that Audacity is used so widely. And I'm going to just take a peek at comments. Great tips on setting up recording space. Great. In a closet, okay. And put a blanket instead of a pop filter. That's a great idea. I'd love to try that. Or maybe just a towel or a washcloth or something might help. Okay. Audition is audio software, I take it, Catherine? Okay. And Catherine, did you find that there was a trade-off sometimes if you would, apply some sort of change to the audio? Or did you feel like it was worth it? Not significantly. Okay. Anybody else use other audio software in your experience? Okay. Oh, yes, a link to the info on setting up the recording space would be great. I bet I've looked at it, too. And Virginia, okay, so Virginia, I assume that you keep using Sound Edit Pro because it's been more helpful than it hasn't caused any issues with degrading the quality. Okay, and you can just type in there if you...
Yeah, let me respond to Preeti. I will get that link. I'll get it right now. I'll get a link to the latest webinar by Robert Hirschnall.
Oh, nice. Okay. So back to setting up your recording area and equipment. This is another question mark. I found it was very helpful to get a noise-canceling headset. And now some of my work on this project was done in the summer, and my kids had a babysitter, but there was a little bit of in and out sometimes, and not so much for recording, but for editing. It was very helpful for me to tune things out. And if you're doing editing in a noisy office or even a mediumly noisy office, that this might offer you more chances to work on editing and be able to, because you're going to have to hear pretty clearly if there's anything in the background that you need to edit out, things like that. So other concerns. Now, I loved the Blue Yeti microphone by the time I was done, but I had lots of issues with it's a USB connection. I had lots of issues at the beginning of my project, at the beginning of my use, over, a 2-year period of doing all these videos over the time, that it wouldn't be recognized. So I would record something, and then I'd notice and say, it is recording through the laptop microphone, not through the external microphone. So just be aware that you probably need to, I compiled sort of a list of troubleshooting that I just taped up at my desk that I just kind of go through if I felt like, if I wasn't, the microphone didn't seem like it was still connected. Okay, and I see that Vicki put up that link. Thank you.
Well, I had an unexpected result in the chat window, so I'm doing it a second time.
Oh, okay. All right, and then I mentioned equipment noise, just to kind of be aware of the things that do and don't show up in your audio, that you might need to turn off the heat for a little while you're recording if you have a loud furnace or blower. Okay. Any other helpful hints, or maybe probably Robert's presentation will cover everything. Anything significant for you, though, that is a lesson learned or? Okay. Okay, sorry, I was waiting for Virginia there to type. Try not to record audio in your room with high ceilings. Good tip. Put a do not disturb sign. Oh, that's so smart. And I'm laughing because mine was more like, I'm on the phone on the front door of the house. Okay. And waiting for Jamie, and then we'll go on. Yeah. Okay. All right, on to actually recording. All right. So again, that last column in that sort of script/storyboard defined what the sort of some notes about, are you going to be pointing something out on the screen through a highlight or a call out? So you kind of need to decide before you record whether you want to use your mouse to point things out or whether you want to use highlights. What I did was I changed my mouse arrow shape to the largest mouse, to the largest arrow, and I felt like that was very helpful in helping see the mouse movement. There are some software packages that also will put a little highlight around the mouse arrow, but I felt like the large mouse arrow was enough. I felt like it was most helpful to do any movements or actions separately from speaking. I actually record my audio and my video at the same time. I know that I've heard people who do these types of videos and first record the what they do on screen and then record the narration, but that just wasn't a comfortable thing for me to do. And I felt like, so for me, I would do the movement separately. So I would say, okay, go to the meeting menu and select start meeting. And then I would move my mouse and do the action. So doing those two things separately, I felt like it was very helpful when I went to editing. So I could cut and change things sort of separately from each other rather than worrying about having those two things in sync. And again, like I said, decide whether you're going to use your mouse to highlight or add callouts. And I'm going to, again, try to show you a video as an example that kind of shows you how it looks using the mouse. And it might look differently when you use the mouse, but just something to think about. And again, I'm going to stop sharing and start again.
Mary, if we did this often enough, we would finally learn how Adobe Connect works, right?
What did you say?
How Adobe Connect works. 'Cause, you know, it's a little quirky.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this is, like I said, this is my first presentation in Adobe Connect. So, right. Okay. So here again is an example of showing the mouse, and I'm going to lean in for the audio.
Read only. Create and read, right up to our highest level of access, which is full width delete. And that's not literally every area of the program. That's just the sales tab. Then we get into accounting. And of course, employees, inventory, payroll, etc., etc. So every area of the program is fully access level controlled. So you can control.
Okay, and I'm going to show, I'm going to see if I can show part of, am I sharing this, the Tariff Shark video? I think I need to stop and start again. I'll be just a second. Okay, and I'll just go to part of the video.
Information. Select the server. Click
That's
change.
okay. So here we go. So this I'm using
You want to
call
change
out.
server connection information. Select the server. Click change. Or if you want to unregister a server connection, select it and click unregister.
And I guess I didn't use it so much there, but for me it just feels a little less frenetic. I guess it feels a little frenetic using the mouse unless you're going slowly. I feel like those call-outs, like the, box in red, circling something or adding a highlight around it, that to me is more smooth feeling. But just another consideration for you. I'm going to return to presentation. Okay. All right. Keep screen dimensions consistent. Now you need to decide on your screen dimensions that you're going to record in. And then, for me this was a problem because I switched laptops. I was switching monitors. I was using an external monitor when I was editing versus recording without an external monitor. And you just might need to keep in mind that if you're switching around that your screen dimensions should stay the same so that the proportion of the screen is staying the same. And then as far as pacing, I started out the videos going slowly, thinking people need to absorb the information. And then by the end of, doing, well, probably a quarter of the recordings, I realized that you need to be energetic, keep the pace energetic, but between different ideas, you need to give a little bit of pause to let people absorb. And then the most important tip I have, well, at least this was important for me, was to relax, because the more nervous I was, the more I flubbed up the audio, and the more retakes I'd have to do. So it was helpful if I could just relax and say, you know what, I can record this again if I need to, and not really worry how things would turn out. Anything else about recording, considerations you need to have? Any suggestions? Okay, and this is one of those times where I'm like, can you still hear me? Okay, I see Virginia typing, so I'm going to assume you're still hearing me.
And we're thinking.
Okay. Rehearse and run through, okay. And I felt like with doing software, that also would help me validate my script and make sure that, you know, my data was valid and that you know, the steps, of course, were valid. Okay, I don't have any experience with smartphone. Virginia is asking about screen dimensions on smartphone. I mean, I assume this is built into some of the software packages that your output now, you have you can select different output. It sounds like Pretty agrees, whether you're going to phone or and I don't have an answer about does Camtasia have any recommendations. HTML5 is responsive. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think of the term responsive design.
It's still a very small screen, no matter how responsive it is.
And we, you know, for us, we knew our users would be viewing from a desktop. We thought it was pretty unlikely that they would be on their phones or even a tablet. Okay, wait on Pretty and then continue. Captivate as responsive design. I would assume Camtasia would then, but, you know, and Camtasia has different, you know, output options. I just don't know if phone is one of them. Okay. Oh, okay. I'll wait. You have some people typing here. Anybody have experience with recording and storyline, responsive design, and then videotaping it in Camtasia? Anyone have experience with that? It seems like you would just be videoing it. When you get it to Camtasia, you would just be pulling it in with one dimension, but if anybody has any input on that. Okay. Well, something you might need to investigate. You probably could get a pretty quick answer on that one, too. Okay, and lastly, editing and producing videos. Okay, so when I showed you the video that I did, and we had title slide, music, and you know, the menu at the front, and things like that, there are different options that you might have depending on the software that you use for editing your videos. Basic editing, such as, you know, cutting out parts of the audio and the video. You know, once in a while I would have a word, maybe I put an S at the end, and I would cut that S off. You know, with some of these things you can get pretty refined. But then you also can add navigation, different user navigation options, like I said, like a title slide, a navigation menu, the topics overview that I had in this video, et cetera, et cetera. You can use visual effects such as pan and zoom. I didn't tend to do panning and zooming. I actually don't think I did it at all. Again, I think I like to have more of a calm feel. I did watch a few videos lately that I felt like, oh, this zoom and pan was done pretty well, pretty smoothly, where I didn't feel like the screen was just moving, that it just kind of slowly got bigger. But we tried to pick recording dimensions that would be the most clear and that we felt would be the most accessible just in general. You can also add call-outs, and call-outs again are those circling things or using an arrow. Trying to think of the other options that you might have. Look at my notes here. Underlining, or again highlighting where the rest of the screen is just, the rest of the window is faded out, and the one part of the screen that you want to focus on is seen. You also can edit transitions from, if you're changing from one part of presentation to another. If you have some PowerPoint slides and then you're transitioning to showing the actual software, you could fade from showing the slides, or you could wipe through, things like that. And then you also have, again, internal features to different software packages that you can use to change the volume of different sections of audio, up or down, or try to smooth out rougher sounding audio. You can use external software as well for those purposes. Okay. Any other considerations? Okay. Before closing thoughts, I see there's some typing. Put applause at the end. Oh.
Like right after I've said, yeah, right after I've said, you have just done, and then XYZ, and then they get applause.
That is, I mean, I love that, and it seems to fit you, Vicki, so as positive as you are. I agree, it's a nice touch. Okay, so just some closing thoughts. If this is new to you, really, I'm sure that a lot of you who have experience know that the key thing really is your information design. That if you're thinking logically about this and, considering some of these things, that your videos should turn out well. And that if you can get into a process that feels like a good groove for you, then it's going to help make things easier, help make things more efficient, and that your training will be more effective and reflect what your sort of end customer needs. Now, depending on how formal your videos are, that can be time-consuming, so you need to think about what the return on investment is going to be for putting in the time. And that you can get a lot of support from joining online groups and finding friends and using your network. Obviously, STC is a hugely great resource for that, get help along the way. And also that for Camtasia, really, and for all the software packages that I've looked at any time in the past couple of years, there's so much free training online that if you can find a good series for the package that you're looking at, that can really make things smooth too. And I would love to hear any more comments and questions. It's been so helpful to hear about your experiences. Okay. So when you say the discussion list, are you talking about, Jamie, are you talking about the email discussion list? That Yahoo, is it a Yahoo group? I'm trying to, or is it LinkedIn? I'm not, I want to make sure that we're, member exclusive list, okay. I'm just waiting.
Multiple people are typing, so.
Okay. And again, those are through email? You get set up on email, or is it run
right.
as a, okay, just making sure.
That's right. And there's, like, for example, our instructional design and learning has got both an announcements list and also a discussions list, whereas the announcements list has only a limited number of people that can make an announcement. But the discussions list, anybody can, so we can go back and forth and ask each other for advice and input.
That's perfect. Yeah. I was going to say that's perfect because I wonder, well, our Chicago STC, I'm part of Chicago STC, and the discussion list is an announcement list are kind of the same. So I think we don't always discuss on that list so much. Okay. Well, I know we're a little early, but I really appreciate your input again. And I would love if you connect with me on LinkedIn. And any questions, last questions? I see someone typing. Oh, thank you, Tony.
I think it's time for everybody to go to the top of their screen and hit the applause button. And give Mary a nice round of applause. This has been both a great presentation and also a great discussion. I enjoyed so much, Mary, what you had to say and how you directed our discussion, but I also learned a lot from just the discussion that we had in the chat room. So this has been a win-win all around for me.
Thank you very much.
Look at all these compliments.
Yes, and I feel like I need to give them back to all of you because I'm glad that I did this presentation before. I've done it a couple of times, and I've gotten some input from people, but I tried to, be a little more interactive this time, and it's so helpful to get everyone's experience versus just mine.
And we do have a lot of experience on this in our attendees. So we want to thank you. We want to say a great big thank you to Mary Whalen for today's webinar. This has been great. I loved the hands-on portion. I loved the talking to portion. I loved your demos. I loved how you presented your information. Will you share your slides? Will it be all right if I share your slides on our website?
Sure.
Okay, great. And I will be getting out the link to both the slides and also to today's recording.